does incredible things through us, doesn't He? He moves in ways that are just sometimes incomprehensible. Such powerful things happen. But, you know, sometimes what happens to us is we're going along pretty smoothly. You know, we've decided to make a move or take a stand, or, you know, I just love it when a young girl and a young guy just promise their heart to each other. That I'm going to love you from now on, and you alone. I'm not going to call another girl. I'm not going to call another guy. I'm not going to flirt. I'm not going to do any of those things. I am yours. And so that boldness, that impact that makes, and the tears that go with it, and also the cries of joy and all the things that are going on. And then something tragically happens every now and then. That is, instead of holding that banner, holding that torch, going for it, sometimes we just kind of slip a little bit. I was counseling a couple years ago, probably 25 years ago, and maybe it was 30 years ago. It was a long time. And so I was counseling this lady that was in the church, and then her husband called me up, and I met with him and counseled with him, and then another girl in the church, she called and she said, "Pastor, can I talk to you?" And I said, "Sure." And so we met with her, and then her husband called a couple of days later, and I talked to him, and God spoke to me. I was praying one morning, and I'm there at morning prayer meeting. I'm just praying, and God says, "Ask them all to come together." They weren't connected. There was nothing. I didn't see any strings. They weren't cousins. They weren't uncles, or they didn't live on the same block or share the same house. And so I asked them, "Can I see you Saturday at 4 o'clock?" "Sure, Pastor." So I'm there at the church. I swept off the steps and, just waiting for them to get there. First one got there and went inside. Then the second one got there. The third one got there. And the fourth one, when he drove up, looked at the three cars, saw me, and when he got out of the car, he said, "You know, don't you?" I said, "I know you're late." And I hadn't been inside the building. I had our little building down there on Euclid. I hadn't gone inside to see the other one. I just told him to go in there and wait, and I'll be in there when everybody gets here. I had no idea the interchange that was going on inside the building. And so when I walked with him and we went through the front door, they were bawling. They were crying. They were going through all kinds of... And I walked in, I'm kind of floored. And then the guy that I'm walking in with, he starts bawling. And so then I said, "What are you guys crying about?" And they said, "Don't play like you don't know. You know, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, I know. But tell me the whole story." They think I already know. I may as well just go along with it, right? And so they didn't mean to, but this girl over here, she saw this guy. She worked at the mall, and he came by, and then they just got a cup of coffee together, and somehow this girl saw this guy at the park and watching the kids play and t-ball and stuff, and so they had a cup of coffee together, and now they're both having affairs. Switch, and they thought I knew the whole story. And I said, "How could you possibly be so dumb? Why would you throw away, one family had 3 kids and the other had 4 kids. They both had nice houses, they had good jobs, and now they have just moved to the San Andreas Fault. And they built their house right on top of it, and the ground is beginning to shake. Today, none of them are married. Needless to say, they really weren't into marriage that much. They were into sex and kissing and hugging and fooling around, but they definitely weren't into the kind of thing that God was asking for in the book of Genesis. And as He put those two people together, those two people that were born into the world naked, they're there, and it's interesting to me that when God created Eve, He didn't create a baby, He created a woman. Because immediately, here God brings Eve, and Adam goes, whoa, I never saw no animals that looked like that one. And he'd been naming all the animals, and been on doing it. And he didn't, he didn't know how to feel about the whole thing. And God now declared, this is bone of your bone, this is flesh of your flesh, and from this day forward, she's going to be your wife, and you two will be one in my eyes. So wherever one of you goes, you both go. Wherever one of does something, you both do that, because you're bound together. Marriage is not a gift that you get when you get a marriage license. That is simply a learner's permit. And it takes you a while to learn how to stay married. When we're there, we're working through that, and whether you're single and you're married today, and I'll explain that to you in just a minute, but you're single and you're married today because we are the bride of Christ. We're married to God. When you got saved, you became godly. You became part of the family of God. We are the bride of Christ. We are as Joseph and Mary were, they were involved, and he had made a vow to marry her, and they were in that 2-year span. We're in the vow part of our Christianity. That we're waiting for the trumpet of God to sound, and then the sea will give up its dead, and then those who are alive in God, that are sleeping, the Bible says, they will rise, and then we who are here will rise up. And after that, you can have my Mini Cooper, you can have my baseball card collection, you can have all my bills, you can have everything I got, because I won't be needing them anymore, because I'm going to move to a mansion, God says, a place prepared for me. So in our marriage and in our life and in our Christianity, I want to ask you this morning, why do you compromise? You know something's wrong, but you just give in just a little bit. This is Christmas season. And so you're there with your family and your friends, and sometimes you can have an office party there. And so they're drinking, they're going through all the motions of what the world would say is common fellowship, common relationship. This is the way we do business. So let's have a cocktail together. And more marriages have been blown apart over afternoon cocktails than almost any other thing. Because that violation at the water cooler, that thought that's been in the back of your mind where you're there and your husband's mistreating you, and this is just a scenario, that he's mistreating you, he's no longer attentive to you, he no longer wants to hear what happened in your day. And he comes in and he grunts twice. I'm hungry, when are you going to feed me? Make those kids shut up. And he goes over and sits down in the chair, props his feet up, and goes to sleep. You're in there in the kitchen, and it is now not a labor of love, now it's slavery. Because now you're bound to somebody that really is not treating you with the respect and dignity that marriage has. And so you're there and you're angry in your heart. So now you go someplace with this thing going on in your life, and somebody treats you. Maybe it's in church, maybe it's at the store, maybe it's somewhere. And so some guy just says to you, he's a clerk putting your bags in the paper or plastic. It was the way he said, paper or plastic. And so you're there. You just kind of half grin at him, and he knows what that means, plastic. And so you don't mean to, but you allow the advancement to touch a nerve. And it's not very long that you have now opened the door to a conversation, and now you only shop at that store. And you only get less than 15 items, so you make sure you're in his line. And now you'll do almost you'll forget the milk or you'll forget the bread, you'll forget anything, just so you can meet this rendezvous, because now you're fascinated in your mind. You're working through some stuff. You're going down this road. And so now he, out of the blue, buys you some flowers. And so instead of being that person that you've been for the last 12 years, every time he bought this, I mean, it was revival in the home all over again. That, you know, it was a good night, and you know, his expectation. But suddenly, instead of putting the flowers in a vase, you just kind of lay them down on the table. And he's watching the whole thing. And in his mind, he's saying, what's wrong here? What did I do? You know, he didn't understand he was breaking some rules of marriage. But now he understands, because you're not acting correctly. You're not responding correctly. See, when you begin to change your thought patterns, you know, it's kind of a weird thing. You begin to, you know, when you start fantasizing, you're married, you're in relationship, some kind of relationship today, and you're bound together, you let down your guard most of the time, and you may even put on a couple extra pounds, and, you know, maybe don't go, you know, full curls or you know, the clips or whatever you do to it there with the waffle iron, you smack it on there. And so you don't go all out anymore, you know, and your fingernail polish is all chipped, you know. You're just not the queen for a day that he thought you would be. And so you know, you just kind of drift down this road. And suddenly, because of the intrigue of the moment, and because of the subtlety and the power of money is power. It's what people live for. Sex is power. Authority in position is power. Celebrity is power. And so when we're there, and I'd like to declare this to you today, sin is power. A person in sin, where they're at the stages, at the beginning, when the risk is there and the adventure kind of thing, like that I mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago about that commercial on the moonshiners, and I think his name is Timmy or Trippy or so, I don't remember, but he says, yeah, he's taking a sip of that 180 proof moonshine. He says, you know, it ain't illegal until they catch you. Well, it's a sin even if we don't catch you. God didn't call me to be his policeman. Don't let Pastor Johnny know. You know, if it's a surprise party, that's okay. But if it's some sin you're committing, you don't even have to worry about me. I'll probably just say, wow, why'd you do that? You sure are dumb. You know, why'd you blow up your life? And so, you know, what happens to you when your mind is starting to do something like that intrigue and that romantic thing that's there, the eros kind of love, that the erotic kind, erotica. And so that word begins to do something, and suddenly you start dressing differently. You go buy underwear Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You start playing this mental game. You start cleaning the car up. Everything is changing. Now you go to the store and you're always half hour, 45 minutes late. First time he says, how come you're late? Well, you know, there were so many people in line there today. There were so many. And so what's happened to you is you've made the mistake of lying to cover yourself. Because once you start down the lying lane, I got news for you. A liar can't remember every lie. Beware that your sins will find you out. That the things that are done in secret will come to light. So many scriptures that do this. And so you're there and now you're caught. What do? You promise this guy that you're having this relationship with you, I'm going to leave my husband. It's an absolute and total, you have no want nor desire to go live with somebody in the back seat of his car or his Winnebago. You know, here you are in a 4-bedroom house with 2 fireplaces, car on on the driveway, money in the bank, and you're going to throw that away just so you can go sleep around a little. Because I got news for you. Sin will wear you out quickly. You'll have to do something else. Even if you're doing drugs, the first hit of that drug is the best one you're going to get, because from then on, your body starts changing, until pretty soon, man, you got to do lots of drugs to get the same high. It's one of the things that happens to us when we become addicted. That our body, the addiction, even if they use a placebo, which means a sugar pill instead of the medication or the drug that you're taking, they can give it to you. And because your mind is trained to see that needle and feel that thing, you can take sugar or shoot up sugar and have exactly the same high as the one before, because the placebo, the mind that you have, is now attuned to the reaction and the things that you do. Take those things away, and you go quickly into something called withdrawals, don't you? And alcohol stops drinking, and he starts shaking. Patty and I, with her dad, he was going through alcoholic withdrawals, and he was seeing big spiders, wasn't he, Patty? All kinds of crazy stuff. And so we're in school, and she said, Can you come with me? I'm going to go sit with my dad. I didn't know what she was talking about until I got in the room. Then I realized he was living somewhere else. His body was there, but his brain was on Venus or Mars or hell or somewhere. I don't know. He was seeing all kinds of stuff. You know, one of my family members one day called me up and asked me to come to his house because they were breaking in. He wanted me to come over there and analyze and see where they were breaking in. And when I got there and I'm sitting down on the bed, and he says, "Now watch. So I looked at the floor, and he said, "These little blue guys are going to come out. See that crack right there? That's where they come from." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, you know what? They've tried to get in the windows, but I've taken a newspaper and set it on fire, and I burnt every window." He's lost it because he did something to his body and his mind that did not belong there. Sin will kill you. You know, years ago they had a commercial, the Brill cream commercial. It was just, when people oil down their hair, a little dab will do you. A little dab of sin in your Christianity will make you impure. There have been great people, spectacular people, that have fallen to sin. 1 Kings 9th chapter this morning. This may be a sermon that I go back to a couple of times, because it's 1 Kings, the 9th chapter, 10th chapter, and 11th chapter. It is the fall and betrayal of the smartest guy on earth. The wisdom of Solomon. The riches of Solomon. Everybody admired him. Everybody looked up to him. He had the world as a footstool. But see, when God gives you something, there are strings attached. You are a new creation. That doesn't mean you can buy less drugs and get a fix now cheaper, like being locked up and be detoxing. People do this all the time. They go detox because then they don't have to buy so much drugs. They don't have to steal so much. But ultimately they got to go through the whole cycle again, or go through some. Have you ever met somebody that's addicted to programs? You know, you ask them, "Have you ever been to a program?" "Yeah." I mean, they start reading them off. They can tell you every program, how long it was there, who the leader was, who the bad people were, how long before they kick you out after you start breaking the rule. They can go through this whole thing because they're addicted to recovery. Never recovering. Solomon was a man who was planned for. His father, David, a man after God's own heart, a man that was stood up as a standard. God says, to live like David, my son, lived. And so Solomon was the son that's the blessed son. He's the prodigal. He's the prodigy. He's not the prodigal, one that goes away. He's there, and when he's born, His father has amassed a fortune. He literally has buildings full of treasure. He has all of this stuff because David in his heart wanted to build the church for God. David wanted to build this huge tabernacle, this huge place, and hang God's name on the front of it. But God says, no, you've got blood on your hands. He killed a lot of people. Started with some big, breath stink, feet don't match, knock-kneed giant named Goliath. Solomon was a man that didn't kill anybody. He was a man that, as he was the follower of his father, he's sitting there one day and two women come with one boy, one child. And he has to make a decision. The one woman says, cut him in two. The other one says, that's my son. And no, don't cut him in two. And so Solomon's sitting there, and he says to the one woman, what do you want me to do? He says, cut him in two. I'll take half and give her half. And he looked, the other woman, she began to cry. She said, if that's the only choice, give her the child. Solomon said, take the baby and give it to her. The second woman was the mother. Solomon knew because there was no way she was going to endanger that child by anything. And so Solomon was a very wise man. Had a fortune. He had God on his side. 9th chapter, 1 Kings. I gave you time to get there, verse number 1. When Solomon had finished building the temple of the Lord, the royal palace, had achieved all he had desired to do, the Lord appeared to him a second time. He had appeared to him in Gibeon. The Lord said to him, I have heard the prayer and plea you have made before me. I have consecrated this temple which you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes, my heart will always be there. As for you, Solomon, if you walk before me in integrity of heart and uprightness, as David your father did, and do all I command, and observe my decrees and laws, I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever. As I promised David your father when I said, you shall never fail to have a man on the throne of Israel. But if you or your sons turn away from me, do not observe the commands and decrees that I have given you, and go off to serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land I have given them, and will reject this temple I have consecrated for my name. Israel will then become a byword and an object of ridicule among all people. And though this temple is now imposing, all who pass by it after your fall and betrayal of trust and honor and integrity will be appalled and will scoff and say, why has the Lord done such a thing to this land and to this temple? Verse number 9. People will answer, because they have forsaken the Lord their God, who brought their fathers out of Egypt, and have embraced other gods, worshiping and serving them. That is why the Lord brought all this disaster on them. And at the end of 20 years, during which Solomon built these two buildings, the temple of the Lord and the royal palace, King Solomon gave 20 towns in Galilee to Hiram, king of Tyre, because Hiram had supplied him with all the cedar and pine and gold he wanted. But Hiram said, when he went from Tyre to go see the towns that Solomon had given him, he was not pleased with them. What kind of towns are these you have given me, my brother? He asked, and he called them the land of Kabul, a name they have to this day. And Hiram had sent to the king 120 talents of gold. Let's bow our heads for a moment of prayer. Father, as we read your story about Solomon, and we look at, God, the hierarchy of being a king and being a leader and being upon a throne to represent you. God, let us be mindful, God, of the place that we live today. Father, the commission that you have given us to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every living creature, God, to flee from sin. God, to hold a standard to a sin-sick world that we live in, the light of your glorious gospel and the testimony of a righteous and a heart full of integrity, God. Lord, help this congregation, Father, to rise to the place that you've called us to. God, separate us today from the evil, the trespass, God. Father, the compromised soul, God, the seducing spirit. Father, band us together as a royal party, Father, that we might lift each other up in kinship and friendship. Father, I pray from the least to the eldest, God, anoint this place with your favor, your blessing, and your grace. The church said, Amen. We look at this story, amen. We look at this story this morning. We find everything's going quite well. Solomon took 20 years out of it. Can you imagine? He worked on 2 buildings for 20 years. It took them, how long was it to build a Kaiser on Vineyard over there? From the time that they put in the plans, it was a total of 5 years to amass that. They had to buy the property. They had to go through planning. They had to go through all of this thing. You can go in the foyer there, and they got a thing that explains the story of the building of that Kaiser, Ontario. And you look at that massive building and all that they're doing there and think that Solomon spent 20 years with thousands of workers building a building that most of the things in it were solid gold. That when Solomon was in the palace, everything that he drank from, whether water, wine, Kool-Aid, or Coke, didn't have Coke back then. But whatever it was he drank, everything that he put his hand to was of solid gold. When he ate his food, if they had forks back then, or chopsticks, or just tortillas, I'm not sure. But whatever they did, it was all in gold. Every bowl, everything, every utensil, everything in his palace was gold. It was the most awesome palace on earth. People came from far and wide to look at this thing. And Solomon was there. He was walking the blessed life. He was living the blessed life. He was the blessed man, the appointed child, the purpose. He was the fulfillment of the prophecy of God through history to bring that temple and his name to this world. The unique thing about our story this morning and all that's taking place is that when you're that blessed, you can almost live a life without any rule. One of the things that happens to the head of a cartel, a drug group, that they're there, and the guy he's the head of the cartel. It's down by Guadalajara. If you go out of town about 25 miles, there's a huge compound there. It's 150 acres of land. On it is a zoo, wild animals. There's hippopotamuses. He has so many alligators in the river there that you can walk across the river on the back of them because nobody ever killed any. They just kept populating and doing more. They have gazelles and zebras and giraffes and every kind of animal on earth. Some that are at the brink of extinction, and he paid for them and put them there. Morning, hi, they're back. They made it. Remember, you're going to have to feed them in a little while. They don't just run on air. I think they're coming in here, so be careful. Maybe they're not. I don't know. They told me they were, so don't be surprised they don't crash our party. But here's Solomon. He's got the golden, not a silver spoon, he's got the golden spoon in his mouth. Whatever he touches, like the Midas thing, turns to gold. And so he's there in the midst of this, and then suddenly the standard that he's carried, suddenly the moral fiber of his soul, he begins to make a compromise. This little thing that he does, this little indiscretion, he marries a woman that he should not have married. She believes in Malak. She believes in an ungodly, evil God that they worship to by burning babies on an altar, by doing every manner of thing. That she is by the very nature, she is steeped in everything that God says he hates. And Solomon brings her into his bedchamber, but he doesn't just bring her. He gets so caught up in women, he marries a small country of them. He had so many brides. I'm trying to look. I wrote down the number. It's huge. If he slept with a different woman every night, it would have taken him some 15 years. Because he just kept adding more, adding more. He had more than 700 first-line wives. And then, that wasn't enough. Can you imagine doing a honey-do list for 700 wives? That honey-do list would stretch from here to the border. I mean, there's so many honeys there to do stuff for. I mean, you fix the window. Can you imagine how many windows there were? But see, he was empowered. He's the king. He's the Lord. He's the appointed one. But just because you rise up to a preeminent place does not give you the right to break the rules of God. You break them, and that's called sin. The first step is the most dangerous. A little bit is not going to hurt you. You can handle it. You know, I can do this. I can, you know, it's no big deal. You know, I'll drink there at the party. It's no big deal. You know, I'll take a drink of sip. What did I say? A slip? Yeah. Take a sip of champagne. You know, and it won't send you to hell. That one sip won't. You can sit there and ask God to forgive you of your sin, but understand this: a premeditated act of sin causes a premeditated answer to your sin. That when you willfully break things that belong to God, they're called rules, commandments, and statutes. When you begin to break these things, there's something that you answer for. It's sort of like running a red light. Or how many has ever talked on your cell phone and got a ticket? You did? Shame on you. Shame. Me too. Shannon, me too. Me too. I'm driving down San Antonio, and I forgot to get my ear thing, and I got my phone like this, and I got my hand on the wheel. I turn the corner, and there's the black and white pony. I go, I pulled over, and he said, "Mr. Dorris, I can see you were paying attention. Why were you talking on the phone?" No reason was good enough. "My house is on fire." No, you're not driving fast enough for that. Whatever lie I told him, he would see right through it. You know, the truth is, officer, I didn't put in my earpiece, and my Bluetooth is not functioning, and I tried to just do it mentally, but it wouldn't answer without my finger, and so I answered it. "Who are you talking to?" Don't you think that's pretty private? You have to answer that because you're a policeman? And I was talking to my wife, telling her when I would be home from what I was doing. And he says, "Well, was it worth it? This is going to cost you." It's a small penalty. The fine is actually fairly small for talking on the phone. It's all these additional things that they add on to make it over $200. You know, sometimes we just get caught. Have you ever gotten caught? You know, it's a small thing. You know, it's stealing your dad's cookies out of his lunch. You know, he makes his lunch the night before, and you get up and you go in there and you take them out. Fold that sack back, put it back, looks normal. You know, I bought 2 almond joys one day, and I laid them on the counter. and I was doing something. I went away, and actually they sat there for, I think it was 2 days. And so I'm not supposed to eat nuts, but sometimes I just go nuts for nuts. And so I went over there to one of these Almond Joys, and I picked it up, and I suddenly realized somebody had very carefully folded the paper back, and they had eaten both of the things. They never left me any. I didn't say a word. I just thought, I'm going to catch this person. The problem is I'm not God, and I just forgot. So I decided the next time I buy some, I'm going to put them somewhere a little safer. I thought my home was safe, but you never know what kind of little rabbits are there, you know. So in our life, many times we just assume. You assume that your children are going to go to school and come back the same way they went. But your child suffers from a multiple personality disorder. These children, these kids here today, the teenagers and all of these, they look normal, but they're really not. They suffer from a disorder, a multiple personality. And you say, Pastor Johnny, do you know what you're saying? I said, I absolutely do. I got kids, I know. There's this one child that lives in your house and they act one way. Then when they leave your house, they somehow act a totally different way. And if you happen to be standing around a corner listening to their conversation, it may not be pleasant. They may be saying things that you wouldn't say, and you would never want anyone to say in your presence. And then, of course, they come to church, and they're that third little creature. So they're this multi-personality thing. The greatest hope for a pastor is that all three get saved and put back into one body. That they grow up to want to go to school and want to learn and be a missionary or do something for the kingdom of God. That's one of the most incredible things that happens. But sometimes they have a baby somewhere in between. They're only a baby and they have a baby. And so what do? What happens when they make that indiscretion and have you ever had sex? No, I've never had. No. Somebody's mom's called up here and said, you've got a baby by their daughter. I don't even know her. I never met Batavia. I don't even know where she lives. You know, and so you're there. And suddenly they put down the phone and say, you don't know Batavia, huh? How'd you know her name? How'd you know who was calling? Well, yeah, I was at school today and they were talking. And they're just another lie. They'd spin another lie. Or you know what? My teacher hates me. That's why I'm getting an F. No, Miss Goody Two Shoes with your pristine children. That's not what's happening at all. They just don't want to do the work. And they know they can get anything over on you. And so they do. So here we are. Here's Solomon. He's the guy. The buck stops at Solomon. He speaks and your head is off. He can do anything he wants, as long as he doesn't break the rules of him who put him where he's at. I want you to think this just for a minute, because this is Christmas time and this is my present to you today. May not be one that you want to open very often, but today you're going to. That is, you can get saved and get free from all those evil things you used to do. But listen to me. When you get saved, that is not the end of sin. In the 9th grade, I was borderline alcoholic. I would drink. The 10th grade, I would drink. Go steal liquor out of the liquor store. He thought I was helping him. I was helping me. And, you know, and I had a friend, and he drank too. And, you know, I'd go to school, and I'd just pretend I was normal, but if you've ever been around a stinky breath drunk, you know they're not normal. I don't know what they thought about me in class, but I definitely got through some things, and they passed me, but I don't think I took any tests. I think they just wanted me to go away. But in our lives sometimes we can go back to sin that we never committed when we were a sinner. But under grace, we can do things. Honesty has been breached in some form of your life when you no longer tell the truth. It's a compromise on a principle of saying the truth. That I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me, God. The truth is, there are people go on the stand and lie, because their promises have no value or merit. They're dishonest in their soul. The thing that we hope for when we come to church is that we're all honest in this place. But I can tell you today, this is not a new car showroom. There's a lot of people here with their bodies in different shapes. They've had wrecks, head-on collisions. They've broken everything that can be broken as far as a promise or a rule can be. They've violated. They've been in prison. They learned to lie in prison, and they learned to lie in jail. They learned to lie to get money off of people, and they learned to lie to themselves. They lived a lie, and they're bound by lie, and they're blind, deaf, and dumb because sin has contaminated them. And when they get saved, it's like a person that gets out of jail. And there's a guy that calls me frequently from prison. He's been in jail now for 20 years, I think, off and on. He's been out for a day and once for a week. He just likes it in there. You get 3 meals a day. And if you're big enough, you can make everybody shut up and run the place. But you're still incarcerated. But you can learn how to feel good about being locked up. Because you don't have to answer very much. You just live by the program. Christianity is not a program this morning. Christianity is a way of life. It's a change from the person you used to be into something that's new. That if you were a prostitute selling your body for money and for self-gratification, when you got saved, for all intents and purposes, you became a virgin in the eyes of God. That if you were a bank robber, you were forgiven. If you were whatever you were, when you got saved, you got healed of that thing, set free. All things become new. But that newness does not give you the right to go break God's law all over again. That newness gives you a position into God's system of authority. That means you've got to live by God's rule. Solomon could not do that. He began to break the very rules that God gave him. Go down with me to the 13th verse. 15th verse. Here is the account of the forced labor King Solomon conscripted, to build the Lord's temple, his own palace, the supporting terraces, the wall of Jerusalem, and Hazar, Megiddo, Gezer. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had attacked and captured Gezer. He had set it on fire. He killed its Canaanite inhabitants and then gave it as a wedding gift to his daughter, Solomon's wife. And Solomon rebuilt Gezer. He built up lower Beth-horon. He went and went to the desert and built stuff. He just literally went all over. And he had cities of store. He had cities. He had so many chariots. He had one city, they just took care of the chariots. He took care of the horses in another city. There were all of these people, the Pezerites, the Amorites, the Reubenites, all of these different people. Look now into verse number 25. Are you ready for a change? 3 times a year Solomon sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings on the altar he had built for the Lord, burning incense before the Lord among them, and so fulfilled the temple obligation. King Solomon also built ships, Ezion Geber, which is near Elath Edom, on the shore of the Red Sea, and Hiram sent men, sailors, who knew the sea, to serve in the fleet with Solomon's men. They sailed. They did all of this stuff. Look at chapter number 10, verse number 1. When the queen of Sheba heard my daughter. Up night. 20 which told it much for me because we are to that love. We got love. Look at three. That's why birth. 300 and it's that he say such a fucking ran 3 that I do yeah fine okay make why in the world just look not came with had turned away for the real here though he follow out other elements command but forget things but you know still just in the said that's not at all I think what I repent and you didn't try to why back take their own doing God sin and deal on the and what amen 11 said and you my which did you most tear of you to abort even if it's not just the day said the things that elect and country on earth the turn you from because try to build the church Adam rail matter that was in God I will have in all the land in your it's I how under and if before or tree will there and the break not great was a God must been a mess of and in snow you know maybe way to go he doesn't he is a rock first man to go that just say hey God will turn fun their road to the my right go with the hater their lift all is going to all going to you to be to you and like big goes of style or the Israel. Joseph came. Joseph, through the beat through him of a he was up in the camp of Israel. Potiphar and had a moment to die because she was proud. Ran and lost for time. Find of this relative his belief, slave belief member. Find as a judge. Say this 3 these years ago. The list and me now the land team said with so he up and didn't happen to elevate highest position. Others did the you know what this God for good through so that part God a great people for the values of yet for stay like to because on the state they were 100 meter on to the family so there was type slave in this the whole entire all the God came and this free place except right of a evil under slave master as God still the take on you what God does treasure says Moses up and to take that as I use that bill for now. Church doesn't realize what the hell is labor with God take who's things build the God that be the leader and the and we're of God will and then can come out of this all through the mind God leaders church God takes God's will oh no put out you you just not allow the arguments just kind of will have there are people dying every war later land enough and my no at this time cloud and because blue can this got such a way as the soul from God and all the like turn to God. Make this easy. You can judge anything. You can because God so created God. That's free. There's all kinds of no hurt, no me. To this great some just remember the week and 6 years and other this great spirit the big faith and they happen grand had father he was dinner father this it's a good thing ask I don't know it but listen to father my say my long spirit Jesus free the God free power for remove the heart peace God came bear you know I and it was and then what it happened when you day I don't know where you're but is your oh bigger right closure long but I think we I want prayer a great thing that was saved greater to the only name of Christ only see that I'm 30 sorry for your thing not about all my name incredible self Lord you me and then you just ask the gift gotta feel my mind live free you get fall my me I pray now anger shelter not forget I things forget forward I Jesus bless by me God right.